Minister, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you and a very warm welcome back here to Cardiff to Renewable Wales 2015. When I addressed this conference last year, it had a different name. We were at a different venue and we had a rather different government at Westminster. And it will not surprise you to learn we have a little more to say about that during the course of the day. But this is, nonetheless, the second time our conference programme has been designed to reflect the wider renewable energy sector rather than the traditional wind, wave and tidal technologies alone. Now, naturally, those traditional sectors are going to feature prominently, but I'm pleased to see our membership, particularly here in Wales, both growing and widening in line with the expanded remit, which includes energy storage, smart grids, and green building, as well as all the renewable energy technologies. Once again, we're delighted to showcase Welsh Government as headline sponsors of the event. And we are, as you would expect, extremely grateful for the generosity of sponsorship. But I'd also like to use this opportunity to applaud the Welsh Government's continued support of the wider renewable energy agenda and their foresight in recognising the growing importance of storage and smart grids to the overall success of renewables. The renewable energy sector is starting to become a victim of its own success, or perhaps I should say, a victim of the lack of foresight within the established energy sector. Large areas of Wales have come dangerously close to exceeding their grid capacity. Now, that potentially does give impetus to innovation through smart grids and storage. Although storage is currently an expensive solution to grid capacity, there can be little doubt that the success of renewable energy is going to be closely tied to a cost-effective solution to storing energy in times of excess production. The Smart Energy Wales conference, which we will be presenting in September, is going to be an excellent opportunity for all stakeholders in Wales to hear about the latest developments and to understand more about that rapidly growing sector, and I do very strongly commend it to you. Further technological developments are also crucial to the continued growth of renewable energy as part of the low-carbon mix. But at least as important are the policy frameworks which are shaped by the political imperative, which support or hinder our sector. The recent general election threw up a result which surprised us all, even the most seasoned political observers. I include myself in that. But there are still positives. I really do believe that there are still positives to be drawn from the outcome. The Conservatives have made much of their opposition to onshore wind, but they've emphasised at least as heavily the importance of low-cost energy to homes and businesses. Squaring that circle is going to be quite a difficult challenge, and as the cost of renewable energy, including solar and wind, continues to drop, the argument in favour for onshore wind will remain compelling. They've also confirmed their commitment to protecting the Climate Change Act, which ensures a continuing focus on greenhouse gas emissions. But you may rest assured that as your industry representatives, we shall be doing everything in our power to ensure that onshore wind remains a visible and an important component of energy policy throughout the United Kingdom. And we know that the industry we proudly represent is also committed to ensuring that every kilowatt hour of electricity is delivered as cheaply and as safely as possible. With its abundant renewable energy resource, Wales should be a powerhouse for the United Kingdom. A year ago, I stood before you and suggested that one of the biggest opportunities to develop that resource, signified by the Mid Wales wind farm public inquiry process, would either be realised or in some other way resolved by the end of 2014. We now have to recognise that that timescale was hugely optimistic, and to our deep frustration, we still appear to be some way off a resolution to a set of projects that could prove transformative for the communities and businesses of Mid Wales. Without the large investments like these in Mid Wales, the likelihood of funding for the infrastructure to support manufacturing and agricultural initiatives in the region becomes increasingly remote. We will continue to make the case to the relevant UK Minister, and we hope that the inquiry outcome will finally produce a result which supports the businesses and communities of Mid Wales and provides opportunities for the next generation of engineers. On a more positive note, we're very close to finding out whether the first of a new generation of tidal lagoons will be given approval, in the same way that the Mid Wales wind farms could revitalise the businesses of Mid Wales. The tidal lagoon could reshape the future of South Wales, and we wish Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon every success in the next few days. Marine renewables continue to be a source of interest and inspiration all around the coast of Wales. And beyond the grand ambition of the tidal lagoon, there's still a significant appetite for tidal stream deployment, both north and south. We salute the ingenuity, the persistence, and the dedication of those working in the marine renewable sector. Let's not underestimate the challenges they face, but still look forward to the time when the regions that host those new developments will reap the benefits of their foresight and their commitment. As eyes in Wales inevitably turn from Westminster towards the 2016 elections for the National Assembly, we're delighted to see such firm support from the current Welsh Government and the ministers for our sector. The recent decision by the Minister for Natural Resources to consent the Garrick Lloyd wind farm was a strong statement of intent, as is the Minister's very welcome agreement to provide the political keynote for the Smart Energy Wales conference in September. With continued activity on the policy side from the reformed Ministerial Energy Delivery Group, there are indications that Wales is now starting to accelerate along its chosen path towards sustainability, and we're delighted to welcome to the podium one of the architects of that vision, the Minister for Natural Resources, here to give our political keynote address. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Mr. Carl Sargent, AM, Minister for Natural Resources.
Bore da, good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with you and address you this morning. I thought very carefully about our contribution today and what about the messages that you need from this conference today. I thought I'd start with a very key demarcation line, certainly a tweet that you may want to use, that Wales is open for business. We are very keen to ensure that we can work with the industry and with the sector to ensure that we can develop the sustainable future for Wales that Wales and the communities need. I think it's a very different message from the stark election results that we saw last week. You would expect me to be political slightly, I hope. The fact is we received the election details through from the general election, and of course I listened carefully to the manifesto commitments from the Conservative Party. I think now, people of the UK have spoken, and we've elected a UK government with a different agenda, which we still lack detail. And I think that's very unnerving for the sector, where we still await the details of influence and outcomes of them keynotes within the manifesto context. And I think what we have to do in Wales particularly is just give you a surety that our position hasn't changed. Our position is still very keen to work with you, the right places, the right development for the right opportunities. We in Welsh Government recognise the fundamental importance of the energy sector as an economic and a social enabler, as well as an industrial sector in its own right, and that is reflected by the cross-government approach we take with the Minister for Economy, Science and Transport and I working together to develop such an aspiration and government policy. I wanted to speak with you today on about my ambitions for Wales and the broad initiatives we're already taking forward, and then opportunities we see for the creating a better future for Wales, and how do we do that. I want to see an urgent and sustained effort to make a move to low-carbon energy systems, but we will only have succeeded if we create, for me, three key areas: a fairer and socially just Wales, an enhanced environment for Wales, and an economically resilient Wales. And I think for far too long we've had them three structures competing with each other, but actually I think we can have a much clever way of enabling the three to come together, and that's part of what my narrative will be today. These desired outcomes apply across all of my portfolio, but indeed all across Welsh Government, and now we've just implemented a new Welsh Government Act, which applies to the public sector too. There are some uncomfortable truths we face, and I think I'll share them with you. In my view, it's easier to think about today rather than tomorrow. It's clearly something that we have to be very careful about. It's easier to tackle problems than prevent them. It's easier to work in silos, and I'm sure you will recognise this, than to look in the wider context. And it's easier to ignore the essential links between our environment, our economy, and our quality of life. As I said earlier, the three strands of sustainable development. The legislation I'm bringing forward will address all of these issues, I believe, and there's a jigsaw of a suite of tools in my portfolio that we are two-thirds of the way through. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act will embed the sustainable development principles in everything we do in government, but in the broader public sector too. And I think as private sector or NGOs, I think we should start thinking about that as well. While you may not be involved directly in the legislation process, it is a clever way of thinking about how do we do business longer term, how do we make our investments, picking up the three strands of sustainable development and embedding them, not an add-on, actually the core principles of how we should make investments. And that's why I think the balance between them three strands can be delivered by applying the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Within the Act, we have embedded some goals, the aspirations of Wales. Where do we want to be for the future? And alongside of that, part of the other suite of tools we're implementing is the Environment Bill. I launched that on Monday, and it would be fair to say when the First Minister gave me this portfolio to manage, when I saw the legislation profile, 3 bills within 18 months, I was nervous, to say the least. But I'm encouraged, actually, because we've got 2 of them nearly through. The planning bill, which I'll touch on again in a second, went through the 4th stage at the Assembly on the 4th and final stage and received support on Tuesday. We're just waiting for the royal assent of that, which will hopefully be in July. So we've got 2 bills under the belt, effectively, and now we're pushing on with the Environment Bill. And the Environment Bill is the last part of the jigsaw in this portfolio to say, how do we manage natural resources in a joined-up way? And using the 3 tools, we can. It will set out how we prioritise natural resource opportunities to support the economic growth and development sustainably. And I think these are the tools that you'll be using when you're working with us as Welsh Government and with planning authorities across Wales. The planning bill will also streamline the consenting process to ensure that the right development in the right places now and for the future too. And this, of course, builds on the Natural Resources Wales group now, which is successfully delivered in its commitments to improve our environmental regulation too. The legislation will work together to put in powers that we need for the long-term resilience of Wales. Hopefully I've shown a personal commitment to this and government commitment, where I'm using the flexibility of the planning system to what I believe requires local authorities not to approve fracking. And I'm also equally committed to use flexibility within the planning system to remove the obstructions that we find ourselves in when we are up against difficult decisions in difficult areas. The worst thing about planning is politics. That's the reality. And I can say that as a politician. It's really difficult to make decisions sometimes locally. So we have to think about the implications of that and dealing about planning applications in planning terms and planning terms only, but not taking out local democracy. It's absolutely imperative that we have people's views listened to and acted on. But it's about fairness, and the enabling system and the planning system of fairness is something that we've just introduced. It's also increasingly important that energy is generated, in my view, closer to communities where it's used. And as this is more efficient and connects people with the energy that they use, and again, it's sort of fits in quite nicely with the UK narrative about what the network connection may be in the future and how they're going to enable that. So what do we have to do to mitigate some of these issues? And local generation is something I'm very keen to work with too. Many town and communities are already exploring ways to generate their own power. We'll continue to support those projects and to increase and emulate more across Wales as we do that. Energy projects are important for resilience, the resilience of community. In October, I announced our intention to take forward the Green Growth Fund for Wales, which aims to increase and accelerate projects across Wales with green investment. And our scale of ambition is significant. I've committed this year £5 million to establish the fund. And again, this is being used and complementing support by a large number of public sector projects, enabling Welsh capital investment and stimulus to the renewable and energy efficiency industry. And I think this can grow significantly. And later on this year, I'll be making some more announcements around green growth. But we're not going to successfully create a low-carbon economy simply by consuming more and more energy. The reality, even with more renewables, we must continue to prioritise energy efficiency within my portfolio. And I'm very proud of the programme we have here in Wales and not in other parts of the UK around our Bed and Nest scheme, which we are investing in our communities in the infrastructure around Wales, making more homes resilient and more energy efficient. That's why I also recently launched the Resource Efficient Wales programme, again a one-stop shop where people now can contact an organisation, a trusted organisation, which will give them the best advice on supply or indeed the way we use energy and how best to do that. And I'd encourage people to share the Resource Efficient Wales hotline number with your constituents and the people that you meet in your industry. The Green Growth Fund, which will also look to invest in the quality of energy efficiency schemes that realises return not both on cost of energy saving, but also the scale that we need to invest in at a high level. But it also increases and ticks the box absolutely about building the economy. And that's what I started my speech with earlier, about how do we balance the strands of environment and energy. And I think this is one way of the green growth sector. And I want to have Wales as that clever green country. And I think we can be, certainly moving forward, one of the leaders around the globe. But I need your help to do that too. Can I just also pay quick tribute to our friends across the sector who've worked incredibly hard with the narrative, because it's a really difficult one, because if you live in a community and an application comes forward for wind farms, there's some that love them and some that hate them. And I think what we have to do is have an honest conversation with people to say, look, this is the real issue around the technology, this is how it operates, and this is what works, rather than the hostile media to renewable energy. And I think you're doing some really good work out there as the sector to deliver on the narrative. But I think we just need to up the game. If Wales is going to be that clever, renewable, green country, then we need to make sure people fully understand the implications and opportunities for them. I wanted to welcome and thank the support from Ofgem as well in delivering on our most recent work in this area, engaging to meet the aspirations for the distributed energy network. And we look forward to working with them again and on the network, and how we work on pilots and operators to test and trial the smart grid technology that we are seeking to develop here in Wales. Again, another piece of work which is highly technical and very complex, but it's about building in community and how it actually works on the ground, and I'm grateful for all the people that are helping with that programme. One thing you can do, the Economic Community Benefits Register shows certainly many of today's large onshore wind developers recognising the challenging roles, but what I would hope that you could get more engaged in, if you're not engaged already, is the Energy Economic and Community Benefits Register, an important tool that we launched last year. It's make a good start, certainly, but it's not complete, and it needs to truly reflect the investment that you're making in Wales and what the opportunities are for the renewable sector. So the register has now been expanded till the end of June, I believe, and therefore I'd look to you. If you haven't registered, then certainly you should. Friends, we can see our energy system evolving to meet our current and future needs, and as I said at the start of the speech, this is a highly complex area for both government here as a devolved nature with limited function in terms of planning, consenting. But who knows, that may change. The Silk agreement may come with some further detail about how that will give us some enabling powers here in Wales to deal with the issues that we should rightly deal with. And I wanted to say we want to work with you. We're very keen to ensure that we have the right messaging from government. As I said at the start of my contribution, we certainly are open for business. We're open for the right business. You can see that I am certainly focused on making sure we can enhance our natural resources, and I think you can be part of that too, enabling new opportunities, a just, fair, economically resilient and environmentally sustainable Wales is what I seek for the future. I am aware, Chair, that we've got a few minutes for questions, I believe, and I look forward to receiving them. I'll hopefully be able to answer them too, but most importantly, from today's conference is about a collection of people that have the same similar interests about developing a sustainable nation. I can say that we're with you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the conference. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Thank you.
Minister, thanks very much. I think we can take that as a sound reaffirmation of the Welsh Government's commitment. And as the Minister has already said, it was prearranged that we would allow a little bit of time. And although we do still have another speaker in the opening session, because of the Minister's parliamentary commitments, we're going to take questions now, and then when the Minister leaves, we'll continue with the opening session. So, do we have a first question from the floor, from the Minister? I see a hand raised at the back. Do we have a microphone? And would you mind saying, because the proceedings are being recorded, if you tell us nice and clearly who you are and the company you represent as well. Thank you.
Alan George, Invicta Public Affairs.
Can you speak to the microphone, please?
Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Right. Well, the question I'd like to ask, Minister, is what point do you think the threshold should be for the Welsh Assembly Government to be involved in the decision-taking process and take the decisions away from the local authority? And what is the reasoning behind striking the threshold at that point, whatever it might be?
Okay, thank you, Alan. Thank you for your really important question. You'll be aware, I hope, that the planning bill, as I said earlier, went through the Assembly on Tuesday at stage 4, and we received support from some parties, not all the parties. Part of that process is a program called DNS. We've applied a program in there for development of national significance, and on Tuesday we launched a consultation document. So if you forgive me, I won't give you a definitive answer on what I think it should be, because actually that's for you to tell me what it should be. I think without preempting the consultation process, I do believe, and as I said and made hinting in my contribution this morning, I think what I've seen, and probably people in this room would agree with me, is that when the process of an application comes forward, whether that's we have devolved powers or not, whether that's a UK function or government function or planning authority function, it goes into the system and we talk about it for a long time, and then we find out there's non-determination or otherwise, or then I get a letter for calling, etc. And it just delays the whole process. My view is that, you know, if we are open for business, as I say, there should be some defined limits. So you know exactly of what the threshold will be. And if it's below that threshold, it will go to the local authority. If it goes above that, then maybe it should be called in as a development of national significance. I think you should be told fairly, look, you haven't got a cat and owl's chance of developing here, or you have, but deal with it effectively, rather than just talk about it in the background and let it bump between Welsh Government or PINS and a planning authority. You need definitive planning processes, and I will deliver that through the new planning bill. But you've got to engage in the DNS consultation, because if you don't, it'll remain as it is.
Thank you for, it was a very nice brief question and a very clear, very direct response, which gladdens my heart, and I'm sure it does for the onshore developers in the room. Goodwill and plain speaking has never gone amiss in our industry. Is there another question for the Minister? Well done. Can you just wait for a microphone, please? Right over here on the left hand, my left, your right, Sarah.
Hello, thanks. Tim Probert from Renews. Yesterday, Nicola Sturgeon said that she wanted consultation over any decision made in Whitehall on onshore wind. What's your position as Welsh Minister?
I agree with her. I agree. I think the fact is that the issues of we've got to get grown up in government across the union. I'm a strong unionist. However, I think we've got to work in partnership, and it's about respect. And I think it's about time that the people of Wales should be making them clear decisions for the people of Wales. And therefore, it's only right that what Nicola says and Amber in the UK is making sure that we have that conversation to see what the impacts are. The Silk Commission was very clear on what the overarching detail was, but we have none of the underlying detail of how and when that may happen. So there's still a big conversation to have, but it's not about being done to you. Actually, you should be having a conversation about how it develops in the future, and I certainly think we should be part of that too.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any more questions? I think this might be a function of it being the first one in the day. Good. Is it Mark? Yeah, Mark. I've got a blinding white light in front of me, which is putting you all in the dark.
Mark Cummings, Invicta Public Affairs. I just wanted to ask the Minister, what more can the industry do to help you actually deliver on the targets that you've set out today? Because I'm very conscious that, you know, there is a mixed reaction to wind energy in particular across Wales. I've been working with a number of my clients for about a year now. And I think there is more that we could do as an industry to help you deliver.
That's a really difficult question, I think. We can create legislation, and I say this on all fronts, that the planning bill was a great example. I've created a framework of new planning system, but actually I wasn't entirely convinced that the planning system was broken in that respect. It was about enabling people, the change of culture, and I think that's the most difficult thing to do. I said to you earlier about talking to the communities, ensuring that they get the right information. Part of the process is about pre-consultation, heavy pre-consultation. It stops an awful lot of negativity through the planning process. And honest information. I think we've got a very intelligent community, and they just need to know the right information. The problem is social media, etc., often presents the negative boundaries of this. And I think one final point, and again, I think what you have to do collectively, and I don't think you've been very good at this to date, and this organisation may help you, is about how you work together better, because when you work on individual projects in isolation, there's competition there, and I think that affects the outcome and how the network is perceived by community too. So I think there's something joined up you need to do as well as individual organisations.
Thank you. That sparked a few questions. Two hands went up very quickly, and I probably will have to finish with these. So could we send the first microphone up along the row here, and then get ready to send it to the chap who had his hand up over there. So,
Tim Melville from Lightsource. PV plays a large part, but I think we're behind in that in Wales, although we're ahead in other areas. In certain counties, PV, where it's developed on business premises, permitted development is now being accepted. No applications are being given. Certain counties are saying, just go ahead and put it on where it's being used by businesses. Can I ask you how you could encourage local authorities to adopt that approach, and whether you feel it's appropriate?
Thanks, Tim. We've amended the permitted development rights, but I can't give you any detail on that today. I will look, when I go back, I will look at that specifically. I'll get my team to give me some briefing on that. Local authorities only want more information when it's a tricky decision. They generally are awash with, they tell me they're awash with paperwork. Don't give me any more until it gets hard. I will look at that specifically. If I need to give some more advice, I will do.
thank you. It was about, halfway.
Dan McCallum, Awalam Tower. I'd be interested in, Minister, in your thoughts on shared ownership between commercial developers and community organisations. The coalition government wanted to see 5% of commercial wind farms being developed jointly with community organisations. I think there's a stronger aspiration in Wales to achieve that and actually go further. And across the UK, there was lots of community interest in owning up to 25% of commercial schemes above 5 megawatts. Do you think that's an area that could be explored further and taken forward by Welsh Government?
Absolutely. And my final question, I believe, but one of the most important ones I've had today, actually. I think there's a huge opportunity for community, and how do we engage in that? I've said, when I came into post around 8 or 9 months ago, I said to my team, my aspiration is to have a bigger stake in this, a bigger stake, not selfishly as government, but actually part of that process, so government and community and business. And I suppose if you'd have asked me this question 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had you wouldn't have had the same answer about working with the private sector and the public sector, how that would have played out. But we're in a very different place now, and I think what we've got to do is maximise opportunity, and I think there is opportunity for all of us. We own significant amounts of land. We're the largest landowner in Wales, with the host being NRW predominantly, and yet our stake in that is limited. I want communities to be involved in that too. So what's the buy-in? We've got our smaller scale energy programs with Univro, but I think there is some more things that we can develop with the private sector and the public to make sure that there is that true community resilience and community energy resilience. And I think that could be a Welsh solution. So we are working on that, and I think hopefully over the next couple of months I'll be starting to make some more announcements about some ideas about working with private-public sector partnerships.
Minister, thank you very much. You've given us an excellent start to our conference, and I expect we're going to be seeing you later in the year. But as the Minister leaves, I'd just like you once again to join me to thank him in the usual fashion. Thanks very much. And the most attentive amongst you will also have noticed that I didn't do the usual health and safety housekeeping announcement this morning. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to do it now. We've been advised by the hotel that there isn't any intention to test any emergency evacuation equipment or alerts this morning. So if we hear one, we really must take it seriously. And I'm told that the alarm is a continual buzzed, beamed, it's a loud noise and we won't be able to mistake it. But this is the important bit, because we're going to split for the parallel sessions during the course of the day, and we're in suites that are joined by the door most of us came in at the back here, which is the top of the stairs. It's not the way out. The way out is through the door to my left and your right at the back of the hall. And if we do have to evacuate the building, we go via that door, out to the front, we turn left and we assemble outside next. That's the information I've been given. Now, the other thing I did say in my, a little bit earlier, that we are recording the conference, and the interference from mobile phones can be quite a bit of a problem. So I normally say, please don't just put them on silent, switch them off completely. But then I heard that we desperately want you to tweet, which you can't do if your mobile phone is switched off. So could you please just make sure that they don't interrupt our proceedings by ringing and embarrassing us all, and get ready to tweet little sound bites that you pick up during the course of the conference during the day. So thanks very much. And so to continue, it's also a tradition. I can't remember how many years we've actually run a Wales conference. It's under a new name this year, it's Renewable Wales, but we have been doing it now for, I think, at least 8, maybe 9 years. And for all of that time, I have been aware and grateful for the support we've had from Jeremy Smith, who heads up RWE Energy's onshore development team, but has also been a stalwart supporter both individually and corporately of everything we have tried to do here in Wales. So now, as the chairman of the Renewable UK Cymru Strategy Group, Jeremy is here to exercise his right and privilege in that capacity to address conference in the opening session. So, Jeremy Smith.
Warada, good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I was very heartened, not heightened. As you can see, I'm quite short. I was heartened to hear the Minister's comments, which I think are probably something we needed to hear at the moment, given the result of the election only 2 weeks ago. I think I need to stay positive. I think we all need to stay positive and optimistic. But first, there's a few things I want to do. I want to thank Richard from RES at the back there in the middle for his tenure doing this chairmanship role over the last 2 years. I think Richard's left the Renewable UK Strategy Group in a good place, and as an industry, during that time, we've had a lot of successes. I think it's worth highlighting a few of those successes so we can slap ourselves on the back and maintain this mood of positive optimism. So, over the last few years, or at least in the last year, deployment of renewables in Wales, our capacity has increased by 15%. Over the next 18 months, Vat and Fowles Pen and Cymwyth wind farm will come on stream. That's an onshore project. The offshore project that we've got in North Wales, Gwynfor Moor, will also come on stream. So there will be a significant increase in capacity at that point. So that's a good thing. The consenting rate for Welsh projects has increased. It's now 52%, which is better than the 18% we had a few years ago. Much better. So that's heartening. It's still below England. Well, no, it's not below England anymore due to our good friend Mr. Eric Pickles, but it is below Scotland, it's below Northern Ireland. So there's work to be done, and I think the planning change is good for that. There's been substantial progress in Mid Wales, unblocking the planning system, dealing with the transport issues. We haven't got the Mid Wales inquiry outcome yet, but you know, you can't hope for everything. We've had 3 Welsh projects that have been successful in the UK government's CFD auction. And I think the key thing for this is it shows Welsh projects, even those that are keyhold in forestry, can compete successfully in that auction. So that's a really good thing for Wales. Welsh projects can compete against Scottish projects and win. So that's good. Finally, significant progress has been made on marine and tidal, and as Marie mentioned, Swansea Tidal Lagoon, there'll be a decision by the 10th of June. It'll probably be 5 o'clock on the 10th of June, because that's the way they seem to operate. One last point on the sort of good news front. Our UK Cymru now holds a fantastic Green Energy Awards. So you can get your tickets by talking to Sarah. You can even sponsor some of the awards by talking to Sarah. So I thought it's worth saying it's a good event, it's a nice lunchtime event, and it's a great networking event. So please attend. So anyway, as you can see, there's been a lot of progress in Wales. As an industry, I think we should clap ourselves on the back and say, well done. It's also worth mentioning, which I think we've really got a feel for now, because of both Maria and the Minister's comments, is that where has Welsh Government moved to? It was almost 4 years ago to the day where there were placard-waving protesters outside the Senedd because of the Mid Wales grid upgrade proposals from National Grid. We then had a few slightly dicey moments, some ministerial comments which were unhelpful, a little bit of depression from various parts of our industry. But now we have 2 Welsh ministers with an interest in energy, the Planning Minister, who we just heard from, and the Business Minister. And in my opinion, we've got stronger leadership from both of them than we've had up until the point where they came on the scene. We've got a legislative programme that should improve the Welsh planning system for what we do, and it should lock in sustainability for the long term. That's a good thing. There's proposals for a green investment fund to kickstart community renewables. Those sort of initiatives have got to be good for our industry. I'm not sure how many of you will have picked up on the Business Minister's written statement of the 20th of April. I haven't got a copy with me. It's worth a read. It's definitely worth a read. But she's set up a Energy Wales unit, and they have been asked to prioritise several issues that will be close to many of our hearts. Things like marine energy, grid availability in rural areas, updating and developing energy policy. Something I've banged on for years, a succession plan to TAN8. That kind of thing, the future of onshore wind, that's all within the remit of this group that's recently been set up. So, I want to talk a little bit about the general election and the new UK government. So I was foolish enough to stay up all night. I couldn't believe the exit poll. I thought, that's got to be wrong. Actually, it was an underestimate. And, you know, on Friday and Saturday, I was really, really down. I was depressed. On Sunday, I was angry. On Monday, I was checking the redundancy terms on my contract. I've got a good counsellor, so I'm okay now, you know, I'm staying positive. But let me be honest, this wasn't the result I'd hoped for. I'm sure it wasn't the one I'd expected. I'm sure it wasn't what we as an industry really wanted. We were hoping, I think, for a government with a more positive approach to renewables. And from my perspective, working in onshore wind and developing onshore wind, I'd hope for a government with a more positive approach to onshore wind. We know they don't like onshore wind. They've told us that before they launched their manifesto. Their manifesto's pretty vague. I think we can be confident they'll support smaller, less visually intrusive renewables. They'll want to see local support and increased community ownership. I think it's too soon to be making hasty decisions on what we do. Now is not the time for knee-jerk reactions. We need to sit back and take stock. And if we can, we need to work with this new government in Westminster to secure an enduring role for renewable energy within a low-carbon future. I think the consensus is several of the ministerial appointments are quite good for our industry. Fairly sensible. They could have been a lot worse. I know my colleagues in England will be absolutely tickled by the new Secretary of State for DCLG and the disappearance of Mr. Pickles over the hill. We should get some idea of where the government is headed soon. The Queen's speech on the 27th, I think, will be key. We've seen some sort of trailing of that in the newspapers over the weekend, but that of itself might not tell us a lot. What will the new legislation say? Beyond that, there are things that we need to know as to where our future is headed. What is the subsidy pot like when they announce the draft proposals for CFD auctions in July? What they do with Mid Wales, various things like that. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that I think as an industry we need to be thinking about in this new world that we've voted for. So, the Conservatives have been clear that they don't like wind power because it's intermittent generation. Doesn't help security of supply. That's their words, not mine. We need to address this issue. So I think the comments that you said about energy storage and smart grid and various methods like that, that's all really important stuff. And I think we also need to make the case that greater deployment will decrease that intermittency concern. Better storage, though, I think is something we really need to work on. They also don't like the fact that many communities, or at least I would say the vocal minorities within some communities, are so often against wind farms. And I wonder whether this will mean more decisions being made locally rather than centrally. And I'm just speculating here, but might they, for example, decide the Mid Wales public inquiry should be returned back to Powys County Council for a decision? You never know. I think if we're to survive as an industry, we need to look at this election result as an opportunity. It's a wake-up call we need. We've got to get to grips with it and change what we do and how we do it. There's only a page and a half of this left. We need to get local people on board with our projects, and I mean really, really get them on board. This isn't window dressing. I think this stuff about shared ownership, we've really got to get to grips with that. We've got to make sure that they have a role and an ownership role within our projects. We need to make sure and really make sure that jobs, benefits, money and contracts flow to those communities so that they can see that what we do makes a real local difference. I think that's essential. We need to do better PR. We should be shouting the good news stories that we have from the rooftops rather than mumbling them like we do. But this also needs a balanced media, and let's be honest, we haven't got one. So, there's a piece of work there to work out how we can change that. We need strategic allies who can work with us to make the argument for a low-carbon future in which renewable energy has a role. I think another thing to think about is backbenchers. So they're going to be very powerful in this government because they haven't got much of a majority. So we need to make friends right across the political spectrum. That's as an industry we need to make friends, not us personally as individuals. These need to be friends for life, not just for elections. A lot of us have become activists during this election. We don't just stop now. We've got to carry that on. We've got to stay involved. The final issue I want to talk about really is subsidies. So it's clear from the CFD auctions that the cost of deployment of onshore wind, particularly, and offshore wind can be driven down. We've seen that. But I think we need to go further. If we're to survive, and if onshore wind is to survive, which I have a vested self-interest in, because it's the only way I'll make it to retirement is to keep working, we need to see subsidies driven down. And I think we've got 5 years. Within 5 years, we need onshore wind to be subsidy-free. And we need other renewable technologies to reduce their need for subsidies as well. Because I'm frankly fed up of green taxes being blamed for increasing energy bills. bigger turbines would help. Now, that might be a big ask in Wales, but not so long ago I was at a wind farm in Holland, our Zuidvester wind farm, where the turbines there were 200 metres to tip. And I would really, really be happy if we could get some of those in Wales. Now, Europe and devolution are bound to be controversial issues for this government. And I wrote this before I had an email this morning about what Nicola Sturgeon had said yesterday. So I had said, or speculated, that it's entirely possible Scotland will ask for greater devolution on energy. And they may or they may not, but certainly Nicola Sturgeon has said that she doesn't want anything affecting the Scottish energy industry. And there's various bits of that, the coal-fired, the conventional, and the renewable side, without them talking to Scotland first. We've heard from the Minister today that he agrees, absolutely. So I think this is a real piece that we need to work on. We need a clear position, both as an industry and as a government, on, is there clear water between Wales and the UK government on energy? If so, what is it? Take the step forward and ask for it and make sure it happens. My personal opinion is that devolution has never been more important to our industry than it is now. We've got a UK government that's very clear on its ambivalence to our industry. It sees fracking as a solution to energy supply and security. And I think the more favourable political regimes in the devolved nations may yet be our saviour. So as the political parties prepare themselves for the Assembly elections next year, and it's less than a year away now, I think, we must persuade our politicians to show courage and leadership on renewables. And I think we've seen some of that today, and I'm really heartened to see that. We need to show that we're ready to invest the hundreds of millions to create a Renewable Wales and help to solve the problems with our climate as well. And we need Welsh communities to benefit from that in the Welsh economy. In short, we need to be a leader on renewable energy in Wales, just like we led the world in coal extraction. As Maria has mentioned, it's less than a year, so we've got to use that time wisely. I think we've really got to make the case in this next year for the future of our industry. Last point, and I know I said that about 2 minutes ago, but we're going to finish today with a political panel debate, and it will be exciting. For the first time, we've done what the BBC did. We've included UKIP and the Greens, and I'll be very interested to hear what the Roger Helmer from UKIP has to say about the 19,000 jobs that perhaps we should go and find ourselves proper jobs. But I think the first question I would ask this panel is this: is it now time for the Welsh Government to have full devolution of energy policy and subsidies, given this government? Thank you.
I'm going to risk, I'm just going to take a risk here and say, when you invite an opinion from Jeremy, you have to hold your breath. And I was holding mine to start with, but I've got to say, Jeremy, I think that was an excellent canter through the situation we're in, the challenges we face, and the really important questions we need to be asking as we go forward. So thanks very much for the thought and preparation you put into your opening remarks. I would say across the board, we are off to an excellent start with our conference today. Thanks to the speakers, of course, but thanks also to Renewable UK Wales. And most of all, thanks to you and your participation in that session. We're going to break now, and all our breaks are for networking purposes as well, and also visiting the exhibitors. So they're back downstairs in the Whitehall suite, where some refreshments will also be served. And then when we resume at 11:15, we are in the 2 adjoining suites, and you'll see from your programme you have a choice of 2 parallel sessions. So thank you once again for your participation and for your support of the event. Have a great day. Thanks.